G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day. Now, I will say it's been another very slow day of news for the Ukrainian-Russian war. But today what we are going to have a look over, we're going to look at the maps, we're going to look at a train that's been targeted, some updates around Sevastopol, a 60 Minutes article, and then talk about some of the finances in Ukraine as well. But where we're going to start is with the winter offensive operations and how the ISW has really taken this in, and from a Ukrainian general about where he sees it going or where it is going to go over the winter in his interview, and some quotes out of that. So let's then begin. So the ISW then has released this, and we're going to go over what this general actually said as well. So the Ukrainian military officials stated that the Ukrainian counteroffensive would continue in the winter. Thankyou told CNN that he expected a major Ukrainian breakthrough after Ukrainian forces reach Tokmak. So let's look at where Tokmak is, in a major Russian stronghold in western Zap. So a major breakthrough once they reach Tokmak. So, of course, here's Ukraine, the capital of Kyiv, red areas occupied since 22 and the purple since 14. Now, Tokmak is down here. This is the offensive, that Ukraine is having the most success in, at least in the multiple areas where they are pushing. So far, they've reached, I think it's about 10 kilometers in. And then from here to Tokmak, wrong one, here we go, about, say, 20 more kilometers into there. So still a long way, about a third the way there. But if we bring up then the defensive works, we can see where Ukraine has come into the Surovikin line here, has been moving through. Some armoured vehicles have been seen up around the second defensive works here, but still a very long way to go in here, and many more villages, small towns to go through in there. So let's continue. And it is important that Ukrainian forces not lose the initiative they currently hold. So talking about that momentum of the front line pushing, that they are on the offensive, Russia is on the defensive. You don't want that to flip. Thankyou also stated that Ukrainian operations will continue through the winter as Ukrainian forces are mostly advancing on foot without vehicles, and the inclement weather will thus not have a major negative effect on the Ukrainian counter-offensive. Now, there is a lot actually in this I want to break down too. So, yes, that it is advancing on foot, I guess, trench to trench, because the only way to clear the trench or to clear a town is on foot. But this is an artillery war. 75% of all casualties, vehicles, around those numbers, is all taken out from artillery. Moving to those areas, if you're rotating troops, to do it soft-skin vehicles, difficult. You're not doing it by foot. If you're in a 10Ks in, you can't have guys walking that in and out all the time. They're going to be targeted from drones. They're going to be hit with cluster munitions. They're going to be hit with shells. You need armoured vehicles in this. And if the only offensive actions, were only by foot, well, why then was it such a need for more heavy armoured vehicles to go into Ukraine? So yes, maybe because you need to clear the trenches, but armour is so important in this. And saying that they're just going to advance on foot, that armoured vehicles may not be needed in this, doing that without armour is going to just be absolutely suicide. You're going up against hardened positions. You're going up against artillery clusters, mines, things like this. The way you assault a trench system, and I was mechanised infantry, so I've not done this to this bloody extent, and I'm glad I haven't, because it's very, very, very bloody dangerous. But trench lines here, you go up on your vehicles, the vehicles are suppressing this. You go up, ramp down out the back of the vehicle, get out, and then you go in the trenches and go from there. There is so much footage of this, because if soldiers in the open above ground, from the amount of shrapnel, everything going on, can't be there. That is no man's land. Man's land is beneath the ground. So the vehicles need to drop, debust the guys into the trenches. And there's hundreds of videos showing this is exactly what Ukraine are doing. If those vehicles can't move, well, we're going to turn into what we saw in First and Second World War in trench fighting from there. Not only has planes, helicopters, whatever, advanced from those wars, well, choppers especially, but the artillery is so much better than it used to be as well. Doing advancement on foot, you're just going to have machine guns, whatever, chew you up. I think that's just suicide. Anyway, Ukrainian Military Intelligence Directorate, the GUR head, Lieutenant General Kirill Bunov, echoed a similar assessment about continued Ukrainian winter operations in that interviewed with Warzone, published in September. ISW have previously assessed that while seasonal weather can slow ground movements and challenge logistics, it will not impose a definite end to Ukrainian counteroffensive operations. The culmination of the Ukrainian counteroffensive will likely depend rather on the Russian and Ukrainian balance of forces as well as on the Western aid to Ukraine. So how much aid is going in, that the weather will definitely have an effect, but they're saying that it won't definitely end it. We have heard different sentiments from American military officials saying that 30 to 45 days to go, about maybe 8 or 9 days ago. So not that long of the weather actually holding out. And we've looked at the weather multiple times, that near mid-end October is when it really starts getting muddy. So about a month from today. Advancing without that armor, I think, is a bloody suicide op. If this can't move guys in and out of here by armor and can't rotate guys, going to be a big problem against dug-in positions, Russian-sighted guns, drones. It is going to be a big ask. Maybe it'll be doable. Maybe small teams in and out, but big offensive ops like that, I don't see too much success if it's just sort of the blow the whistle over the top boys against positions. Didn't work back then, and it's sure as hell not going to work now with significantly better weapons. And we're going to talk about where we've actually seen Russia sort of improve some stuff as well. Now, if you're starting low, not that very difficult to improve. But this is actually what then he has actually said. The weather can be a serious obstacle during the advance, but considering how we move forward, mostly without vehicles, I don't think the weather will heavily influence the counter-offensive. I disagree. I think that it will definitely influence how the offensive goes. The front line advance, the very zero line may not advance with vehicles, but it's the suppression of those vehicles. It's getting the wheeled artillery systems into position to fire. It's getting soft-skin vehicles in and out. Medical extract. We know there's no choppers operating medical stuff, so exactly like that. Sorry. Intense rains in the fall can make the ground in Ukraine soggy and make movement with heavy machinery like tanks more difficult. But Tarnavsky says Ukrainian forces move in small groups, mostly on foot, as we have seen. I think it will likely happen after Tokmak, talking about the big breakthrough. We just saw that at the moment they're relying on the depth of their defensive line there. So they're talking that the depth of the defensive line, once they get to Tokmak, where the advancement will go from there, may speed up. But there are still a lot of defensive works in around here, and it's not like Russia isn't making more defensive works there also. Rather than the Surovikin line, which is a defensive line built on the orders of General Sergei Surovikin, Tarnavsky says the bigger issues are the crossroads, tree lines, and minefields between the tree lines. So yes, the line is where, there might just be fighters, artillery systems, things like this, but in between those lines, there's the minefields, all of that. And we've seen the minefields have a massive effect here too. There's a combination of small, harmful enemy defense groups that currently are planted very precisely and competently. We spoke a few days back about these like small kill teams as well. And that's what a lot of armies have gone to as far as these small guerrilla style warfare systems. But the actions of our fighters force them to slowly pull back when they face our assault squad. So a lot bigger assault squad, these need to move back in. Positive about the enemy outcome, the general conceded that the counteroffensive to be a success, Ukrainian forces need to at least reach the city of Tokmak, saying Tokmak is the minimum goal. The overall objective is to get to our state border. So Tokmak is the minimum goal of where they need to get to, but then they want all the state borders, but hasn't given a time on when Tokmak. I would say before the winter sets in. This is sort of what everyone is saying, that Ukraine need Tokmak to then have more control over the south, to block Russian logistics into Kherson, in then rocking down into Crimea from there. Needs to cut off that southern region, as we can see, where the train line's running by the white lines too. Saying also, right now, neither the enemy nor us uses large formations, companies, battalions, or brigades. We use assault squads, groups of 10 to 15 men. They conduct titanic work of concentrating enemy fire on them and using all the means they have to survive. One of the reasons for the slow advance, the general said, was the fact that Russia was able to learn some lessons from other Ukrainian offensives. We're going to talk about this. Give me 1 minute. The Russians are learning quite fast, as they don't have any other choice. If they don't learn, they will be defeated sooner. I wouldn't say they are adapting to our actions, as we also change our tactics. When asked about the rising resistance in the West continuing weapons supplies to Ukraine, especially in the US, where some have voiced doubt about Kyiv's chances of success. He has said, "Let it be the opinion of the skeptics. It's not a competition and we don't have a choice. I understand somebody may have imagined large-scale counteroffensive operations, but times are changing, enemy tactics are changing, weapons change. We have one goal, liberation of our territories. However hard it is, we will keep on working." And I want to thank even the skeptics. Their criticism also influences our task's success. Now, I think absolutely we did expect these, but we also were sort of told to expect these large-scale offensive operations to it, what sort of waypoints and what sort of time was going to take place as well. Yes, there's propaganda out there, but everyone and their dog expected more large-scale operation than what we have then seen, especially when it kicked off. We first saw like the Leopards come into battle and it sort of fizzled from there, and really from then on has really been a bit of a fizzle. But he says in this about Russia learning and adapting to weapons and how it works, really slowing down the operation as well. And one thing I have really noticed over the past few weeks, even more recently with the MiG getting hit by the new Russian drone as well, is that Russia's ISR, of course, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, has definitely, seemingly at least, to be improving. Now, we know Ukraine has done a fantastic job using drones in tandem with artillery or frontline soldiers to direct shells or guys onto target, and that really changed warfare. But from a lot of new footage I'm seeing, it does seem that Russia is improving this capability. We're seeing, multiple angles of drone strikes and direct strikes as well, and directing guys onto target like we then saw yesterday. So what we're going to talk about is this video has come out from a Russian cluster munition onto a Ukrainian logistical supply train. Now, I don't know exactly what this munition is, but sort of the overall consensus was that it was a Tornado S cluster munition. So the the Tornado S has a range of about 120 kilometers, and you can sort of see the cluster on the ground. Now, there's been some doubt if this is a train or a convoy. Just to my eye, it looks like a train, but I could be wrong. I can't show you this. It will be on the Telegram. But if we skip forward here, we can see all this down here does look like cluster munitions have hit. You'll see it more actually in the footage there, but has hit that train there. Somewhat missed, but there's going to be a hell of a lot of shrapnel, hell of a lot of damage there. I think people have this idea of like bombs in movies, that if it doesn't just directly hit you, you're fine. That's not how these bloody things work. Trust me, especially clusters like that. So this is where the footage has come out and has been geolocated off these sources. You see this train line sort of spear off in 4 ways from here. And then that has been found on the map to then be at this location here near Rodonivsky. So then where we're going to go is, this is Rodonivsky here to the front line. Let's have a look and see if we can put how the distance, the absolute minimum distance of this is 40 kilometers, but probably 10 Ks behind the line. So we're talking maybe 50, something like that. But strikes like this against logistics, this is what is really going to turn the tide of the counteroffensive over winter. Who can actually maintain that logistical demand? Logistical demand is hard no matter what time, but if the weather is even worse, that gets even harder. And both Ukraine and Russia will be absolutely aiming to try and wipe out or limit logistical supply rotation off the front line. And that will have a lot of impact on the front line, how the guns can run, how they can swap out barrels, food, troops, rotations, getting new guys out, getting wounded out. It's absolutely going to have a huge effect there. But it was interesting to see that ISR capability there as well. So I want to look over to Brady Afric, who does a really good job online of satellite imagery, has also shown this. To counter naval drones, Russia has placed layers of barriers and nets and barges at the entrance of Sevastopol harbour in Crimea. So we can see these multiple layers here to try and stop then these Sea Baby drones and other types of sea drones getting in and striking havoc into the Black Sea fleet, which we have seen multiple ships struck there. As well as Germany over the past couple of weeks has said that they're going to send they call them USVs, but they're just a sea drone to Ukraine as well. But we can't get a number on them. It's somewhere between 10 and 100. So it's minimum 10, maximum 100. That everyone in between, there's news articles from bloody everything. So we don't know, but there will be German drones in the waters there as well. And we also don't know the exact type. We know Germany has worked with a number of sea drones and has trialled some as well in minesweepers, but we're not 100% sure, but definitely a very, very effective tool. Now, 60 Minutes has done a piece that has really divided the internet. And to be honest, I'm very surprised to see CBS's 60 Minutes actually run this. Now, this is the US 60 Minutes. We have it in Australia. There's probably other places around the world as well. So let's have a look over this. And it does talk about the Ukrainian economy and where money is going from the States.
American taxpayers are financing more than just weapons. We discovered the US government's buying seeds and fertilizer for Ukrainian farmers and covering the salaries of Ukraine's first responders, all 57,000 of them. That includes the team that trains this rescue dog, named Joy, to comb through the wreckage of Russian strikes looking for survivors.
So talk about that the US is funding the grain and also 57,000 people's salaries as well who are emergency responded, as well as, like the bomb detection dog. There's also a lot of rumours about covering pensions, things like this from the States.
And the US also funds the divers, who we saw clearing unexploded ammunition from the country's rivers to make them safe again for swimming and fishing. Russia's invasion shrank Ukraine's economy by about a third. We were surprised to find that to keep it afloat, the US government is subsidising small businesses.
And also, like they say, subsidising small business. So what we do know in this is that Ukraine's economy has been really hit very hard and has shrunk, as the official figure is about 30%. But that said, this 30%, this is artificially inflated by funds going in from the West and also the World Bank pumping in $37.5 billion. And I can see where this is divided. So people say, in the grand scheme of things, for the Western countries back in Ukraine, it's actually not that much money when you look at like defense budgets and look at government spending in other areas. And also things like grain. Well, Ukraine is a big food bowl that funds so much grain into the West, into Africa, places like this as well. So very important to keep that sort of moving along. But like I was saying, if you actually look at defense budgets and government spending in other spots, you'll see these figures can be dwarfed by other bits. But I can absolutely see on the other side of this, in the current economic bloody climate, I can see why people are looking inwards rather than outwards from their country. I went to the bloody shops the other day and bought like 4 things. It was $90. I'm driving around like an eighth of a tank of petrol because a standard regular litre of petrol is like $2.38 in Adelaide at the moment. It's fucking wild. I can see why people are looking bloody inwards going, what the fuck are we doing spending money outside of our country? Now, of course, large-scale economics is much, much more complex than that, but I can see why the average person is going, what the fuck? So people will say that, this is only about $300 to $500 USD per person of the taxpayer. But for a lot of people, that is still a hell of a lot of money. But that said, that's tax that's going to be collected anyway. It's not like there's a new tax tacked onto that. But I think as well, the West can't afford to let Ukraine fail. Now that we're back, now that we're an ally of Ukraine, everything in this, we can't afford to let it fail. But it is a fact that this is going to be a very long and very expensive war. We haven't even seen any inkling of the end of this at all, either by Ukrainian victory or Russian victory, wherever they put the goalposts of the victory. And getting Ukraine back on its feet whenever and wherever this war actually ends is going to be way more expensive than the military aid gone in. It's going to dwarf those numbers. To rebuild, demine, and of course the huge population issues from casualties in the war to migration to Europe. And it's going to be tough as well. Ukraine is still the second most corrupt country in Ukraine, funding billions of dollars into rebuild roads, bloody demine, all of this is still going to have a big problems with that. We know Ukraine's taken up a bit of a zero tolerance to corruption, but we still see it systemically throughout a lot of local governments, things like this as well. So it's going to be a long and very tough road. And I've heard demining figures in the $40 billions and road networks in the hundreds of billions. So I think the concern is that these figures already dwarf the current controversial funds already going to Ukraine. We are seeing people be more vocal about the money going, and there's going to be needed to be a shitload more of it later on. And the situation's going to get worse than it is now. It's not like less buildings are being destroyed. And if and when Ukraine enter cities like Donetsk, Sevastopol, Mariupol, just the nature of modern fighting, that these cities are going to be destroyed, and for many, a second time over. So I'm not saying this money going in is right or wrong, but it is something that these political systems are going to have to contest with as this war then moves forwards. So let's then have a look over the maps and see what has happened. We've got a lot from the ISW, but not that much real movement on the front line. We've explained about where the bloody maps are, but of course this is Crimea, we move up, and then this is the Orokhiv front. This is where that general was talking about, that it really is a success. It needs to get into Tokmak to be a success. And really been grinding away through Robotyny and now really assaulting this Novoproporivka in here as well. So let's have a look over what the deep state shows, the update from yesterday till today. Now we see that push down in there. Now, what is interesting is we spoke yesterday about some geolocated footage we saw. And let's go down into here, and the footage was right near these two shed lines here, so has pushed down into there. But interestingly, the blue doesn't move. That's like captured Ukrainian territory. All it is that moves is grey zone. So we know there are Ukrainian troops down in here, but we also see what became of that situation too. So there's a hell of a lot of fighting in here, and that Ukraine has really come to the east of this town and could be skirting around, doing more offensive operations there. We know the left of this assault into Verbove has a lot going on in it as well. Now, the daily Ukraine map update doesn't show any bloody updates there either. But let's have a look at what Suryak, the ISW, have to say about this. We'll start with Suryak. So this shows the same footage we spoke about yesterday, and it shows the same movements here that Deep State says. The situation on that front, during the last hours, Ukrainian army advanced southeast of Robotyny and reached the first buildings of the outskirts of Novoproporivka, where the attack was repelled by the Russian army. So, of course, a lot of fighting right in the outskirts here. And as we've seen Russian sources say, each town through here is going to be like Robotyny again and again. Robotyny took a long time to clear through. Once they really entered it, did speed up, but very slow moving through Robotyny here. And if we see this push in here, Robotyny is really the only town in where Ukraine has actually fought into, and they're going to have to take Verbove, Novoproporivka, all of this depending which way they go on to Tokmak. There's still a long way to go in there. So let's look at then what the ISW show. And I want to compare yesterday's and today's. I'll be back in a second. I need to get yesterday's map. Right, so we're going to have yesterday's map then on the left. If I need to move this, bloody hell, there we go. And we're going to have today's map then on the right. Let's see what changes we have seen. So, of course, this is the eastern or the western push, southern push if you're Ukraine, but to the east of Novoproporivka in here, that is now shown up as just the regular blue on here, as well as this push then into Verbove. But not much change in here, at least from what we can see. ISW doesn't have the feature where we can scroll through like day to day in here, but we do know that Ukraine is pushing very, very hard in here, like they say, need to get to Tokmak. So let's see what they actually say then about this. So here we have these maps. So today's report covers a very dynamic situation in the ongoing Ukrainian counteroffensive near Orokhiv in Zap region. The tactical situation is likely changing rapidly and is too soon to forecast if Ukraine will achieve an operational breakthrough in the sector. So they're not sure if they will break through or when. Ukrainian forces are attacking along three directions within the Orokhiv salient. Ukrainian forces are conducting attacks from Robotyny against Novoproporivka, we've spoken about, directly into Verbove on the west and the north of Verbove. So straight south down Novoproporivka, straight into Verbove, and the north here as well. Like we spoke, I think, yesterday about the Russian general who was like, we're really pushing on the left, so that is the north of Verbove. Russian sources report that Ukrainian forces broke into Verbove on September 22nd and continued attacking the settlement with armoured vehicles as of September 24th. So we know the armour is moving into this region. We saw a few days ago the armour up around here as well from some geolocated footage there. Now, this continues on. Ukrainian forces are also attacking north of Verbove and could isolate the 56th VDV, the paratroopers, deployed to this from its sister regiments in the Verbove area, according to Russian sources. So this is the area that if they were to push north in here, could isolate these guys here to support Verbove in here. So, of course, these are mutually supporting areas. Let's look at the distance. Still a fair way to be cut off. You need to be somewhere in here. So it'd still need an advancement of, let's say, another 3Ks really to cut off those guys from the support, but absolutely could happen as well with this road moving through to Verbove where the VDV is. The ISW does not assess that an encirclement of the 56th VDV Regiment is likely, though Ukrainian forces may isolate it from the rest of the 7th VDV Division if Ukrainians manage to outmaneuver it from Verbove's north and the regiment inexplicably remains in its current positions. Nonetheless, the Russian source affiliated with the VDV expressed panic and the prospect of significant Ukrainian advances in the Verbove area. ISW's 24 September update discusses a dynamic situation flooded with contradictory and panicky reports by Russian mill bloggers pursuing their own agendas. Please read carefully, don't take posts or sentences out of context, and be patient as we all work to understand the developing situation. So, as we said, this area is liquid. There's a shitload of fighting in here. There's a shitload of defense. There's a shitload of guys. We don't know where this will go. We don't know even if Russia will launch an attack to the west or to the east to try and close up this salient as well. We know the ground in here isn't really favouring Ukraine with a high and low ground, so it is a very hard task in here too, as Ukraine is trying to push to get a footprint somewhere in Tokmak here or cut off the VDV somewhere. We know more VDV has potentially moved down from bloody Bakhmut as well. ISW has released this. A Russian source claimed at September 23 that Ukrainian forces attempted to attack an unspecified height of 136.7 metres. ISW assesses the elevated point is likely northwest of Verbove. A prominent Ukrainian military journalist reported that Ukrainian forces were attempting to bypass Verbove from the north and attack into western Verbove as of September 22. Of course, trying to bypass from the north and attack down into the south somewhere. Russian sources have been expressing concern that a potential encirclement of the 56th in here we spoke about. Multiple Russian sources report that Ukrainians entered the Verbove settlement, but we don't know where this is. If it's just these places out here, or is it where they've sort of put this dotted line? I would say it's more in here. But we do see small recon teams move in and out. We have spoken about Ukrainians moved well behind the line in Verbove as recon teams, and Russia up in the northeast also well behind the line there. Now, where we're going to move to is we're going to move up into Avdiivka. We've seen no change around Ryazani area. We did see a fair bit of back and forward near Novodonetsky, but no real move. But we move up into Avdiivka, and of course, we're looking at Opitny here. This map doesn't show any changes, but then let's have a look at what Surek says. Situation north of Donetsk City. Recent video showing Russian army shelling Ukrainian positions in the northwest of Opitny, allowed to correct the front line on this axis. So showed that Russian army are hitting here, that Ukraine has now this position outside of Opitny in here. And I think these are fairly similar, although it does show that Russia don't control all of Opitny here. So these maps may look different. This road, I believe, is this road. So they're showing very similar in and around Opitny as well. Now, where I do want to talk about is that Russia did have an advancement just to the south of here. So we look at Mariinka. And then let's go back to yesterday and then today. So we did see this was the location where Ukraine first pushed in for the first time into land held since 2014 by Russia. So then this pushback has been there. And I should say the Daily Ukraine Map update actually does show this as well, but more of just a little nub out from this road. But as you can see, how sort of laid out that Donetsk, Makivka area is, the size of this city here compared to where we're talking about. Look at just, where are we? Let's go down to Robotyny. So look at the size of these areas, these small villages compared to like the city. And this is what I talk about, that the way that it's assault, this is going to just be catastrophic for not only the people that live there, but as well as the infrastructure there as well. There's going to be massive rebuild. And we know Ukraine was pushing on Opitny, but it hasn't seemed to really keep up there either. Now let's look in Bakhmut. Now, we don't see any change on this map, but then we do see Surek talks about Kurtimivka. Now let's look. So we've got Klishkivka, Andrivka, and then Kurtimivka here. So let's bring then this up. Day 557, situation south of Bakhmut. During last week, Ukrainian army managed to entrench in the western outskirts of Kurtimivka. So just this bit here, which is just in here too. So no real change there, but we just see that update across the map there. Well, now, I believe that is everything that I wanted to speak about. Legends, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you guys being here. Appreciate all the support with everything that I do. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.